Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name's Elizabeth, the Education Coordinator for Marlene's Market and Deli. This morning's special guest, which is the first installment of 2024 with our partnership with the Garden Hotline, we have Laura Matter here speaking on the topic of grow your own winter microgreens. She has a fabulous presentation prepared for us, and we thank her very much for being here. Thank you so much, Laura.
Yes, it's wonderful. It came up quicker than I expected, because last time I think we started in February and I was like, oh, we have a class already. Yay.
Yay.
So we did these every other month last year. We're going to do the same this year and kind of go through some special topics. Of course, right now we're talking about microgreens because we still want to garden, but it's kind of cold and rainy out there. It's heading towards colder weather too this week, so we're starting to see the little snowflakes on our weather prediction apps, and everybody's talking about that. But you can continue to do this in your house because this is where they grow anyway. I have done them on my patio table in the summertime, earlier in the summer when it's not too hot, and they work pretty well out there. First, I want to just do a land acknowledgement to note that we are gathered on the ancestral homelands of the Coast Salish people, and they still live here. They have lived here for tens of thousands of years. They are our hosts, and we are their guests, essentially. So we at the hotline in particular, because of the work we do also, we want to impress on people that, it's our responsibility to take care of the land. There's a new calf in the J pod, the orca pod, that is one of the southern resident orca pods in Puget Sound. And they move through this whole Salish Sea system all the way, north and all over the place. And they have been being spotted down near Seattle. And in fact, they were in Elliott Bay last week or so around Christmas time with their calf. So really celebrating that right now. And everything that we do affects what happens in these waterways. All right, so let's talk about the topic at hand. What are microgreens? So microgreens are basically just the young plants of any edible plant that is really just their seed leaves and their true leaves. So when we talk about cotyledons, what you're seeing in this photo here, this is probably some sort of radish or broccoli, or this is a brassica. They have those little heart-shaped cotyledons. Those are the first leaves that come out of a seed. They are already in the seed when the seed is formed. And so, the trigger of warmth, moisture, and getting some light as the plant starts to grow, the seed will burst open and these new leaves come out. They're already there, and then they get hit by light and turn green and become feeding mechanism for the plant to set a good root system. And then the true leaves come out. So the leaves that come after this look different. And then in the case of microgreens, we're trying to grow them past this first stage to one or two new other sets of leaves, typically one other set, so that you have the cotyledon still fresh and you have the new true leaves growing too. These are also grown in soil. So as opposed to sprouts, which we're familiar with, and alfalfa sprouts and bean sprouts are, the two most commonly known of the sprouts. Those are done sometimes on a screen, sometimes in a jar, some sort of tray, and with water and no soil. And what we do know about the difference is they're both great. They're both nutritious and wonderful, but you have to be very careful with sprouting because you want to avoid bacterial contamination. And there's less opportunity for that to happen when you're growing plants in soil, which seems kind of counterintuitive in a way, but it's because the soil sort of takes care of itself. So you cut the sprout, you cut the microgreens off the top of the soil. You don't take the soil with it. And with sprouts, you're getting everything that was grown, root to shoot, and whatever is on it that was in the jar. So that's the difference between the two. What we're talking about today is how to grow little tiny plants in soil. So essentially, we're looking at growing baby plants and eating them. This is what we're going to be talking about: soil choices, container choices, what kind of seeds you can use, how to grow them, how to water them, kind of nutritional impact they have, how to harvest them, and then recipe ideas. I don't have any actual recipes in here. I have pictures of lots of lovely things. There's millions of them online. And there's so many different ways that you can use these. And, that's a palette thing. What you like might be different than what somebody else likes. All right. So soil is always where we start with any kind of gardening class. As Elizabeth knows, we've talked about soil many times in many ways, but you need to choose good, healthy soil to grow a good, healthy plant. You want something that, in this case, is called potting soil because it's made and specifically for putting into small pots. It won't compact easily. It's made to have good drainage and airiness to it. Typically has things like perlite and vermiculite, things like that in it. The less woody, the better, because these are little plants that need a lot of nitrogen just in the first part of their growth cycle. They're not going to be there for very long, so you don't need to worry about fertilizing and all that kind of thing, but you just need some good healthy soil to get them going. The woodier the soil is, they will be less green. They could have more of a yellow tinge to them when they grow. They could also be yellow if they're not getting enough light. And you'll see, I have a picture of some I grew that as they're sprouting, it's sort of winter time, and they needed a little grow light love for them because I didn't have them in a bright window. I want to also point out there's a difference between certified organic and just the word organic. So you'll see organic kind of bandied about a lot on products that are sold for gardening. If it's certified organic, it's going to have some sort of seal, like this OMRI listed trademark here. This is the Organic Materials Review Institute. It's a nonprofit. They actually get paid to certify products. They test them, make sure that they meet the organic standards that the USDA sets. And so you'll see that on this Cedar Grove potting soil. I'm not sure about Fox Farm. I'd have to hunt on the label a little bit more and look at some of the backs of it. There are other certifiers. There are people like the state of California has a US California Ag Cert. Washington State has other Ag Certs, but they're not typically as much on products as they are for food for farmers. But the OMRI listing is very common on gardening products. You'll see it also on the black gold here up on the top here. Also, anybody doing composting like Cedar Grove does, there's composting council things. This is a Washington State certification down here too. But you'll see composting council certifications on soil products as well. Just know that they do have to test a lot, even just for compost itself, not just to get it listed as a certified product, but also just because it's compost. Because they're taking waste product, they have to be looking at what the outputs are. And also just remembering that all bag soil is manufactured. There is a carbon footprint associated with all of this. In some cases, there are good things that are happening, like we're taking waste products and making new products out of them. So, it's a big circle of life. You can make your own soils. So this is what we call a soilless seed starting mix. Know that, bag soils aren't really true soil either. They are pretty much what we're looking at here. They have different ingredients in them, but they are made with a variety of things. I mentioned the perlite and vermiculite. So in a homemade mix, you could have something like coconut coir, some compost, some perlite or vermiculite, and you mix that all together and you can have a soilless seed starting mix. This is good enough for microgreens because it's light, it drains well. You can buy all these products individually and sometimes it's cheaper that way, and mix your own. And they don't need the soil for very long, so you don't need to worry about it not being fully potting soil type soil. Then when it comes to containers, there's all kinds of fun things you can do. I'm going to start with reusing containers. When we teach a lot of these classes in person, and we do them all over King County, and you'll see in this top picture, these were little cups that we were growing as examples for classes that we were teaching. So we typically bring these little plastic cups. We do not put holes in the bottom of them because they're going to sit on somebody's windowsill, and they're clear so you can see whether the soil needs water or not. It's darker, darker if it's moist, and so we don't have to worry about like overwatering. Keeps it tidy, but we use these as examples, and by the time they've grown out, they look like this little tub here, and we show people how to do that. And the reason we use these plastic cups, it's easy to make little kits of them and give them to people, but it's also a way to show that you can reuse containers. So we buy them new. Obviously, we want to give you something we know is, coming off the shelf and clean. But you can reuse clamshells. You can reuse, like I use salad containers a lot when I buy a salad that's in a plastic tub. And I love them when they have the hinge lids because you can close the lid or any lid while you're getting the seeds to germinate, and that actually helps them germinate because you're building a little mini greenhouse. You can use things like a cottage cheese container. You would remove the lid. You could put the lid underneath the container, even if it doesn't have holes in the container. Putting the lid underneath helps to catch any soil that might be spilling out of it, or when you water any drops of water. You can even use recently, my sister brought over at Christmas, her husband makes a fabulous gratin potato dish that they brought for our Christmas Eve dinner, and she brought it in a container like this. And so I still have that. I kept it, and I could reuse that also to grow sprouts in as well, or microgreens. So there's lots of different containers that you can use and reuse that you already have sitting around. You may have pots, that other plants came out of. You may have transplanted a house plant into something bigger, so it doesn't matter the size. We do these in small cups as examples. Obviously, if you want more food, you're going to have a little bit bigger container, but you also need to find a place to put it, so it has to fit into the windowsill or somewhere where there's light. And then there's all kinds of fun stuff to buy. So you can buy fancy little pots like this one that the pea shoots are coming out of. That is really cute. You can buy kits that have trays that you grow them in. And in a lot of cases, there's all different ways that they do it. Sometimes they have these peat type pellets, that expand that you grow in, or they have a mat that's made out of some sort of substance that you grow them on. Or you could put soil in here, but there's all kinds of fun kits. This one has a whole bunch of different kinds of seeds in it, and they are selling this based on sort of nutritional, information, the body balance mix or energy booster mix kind of thing. And then this is what you're seeing is these little greens in the front here growing. Lots of fun things. There are some kits that have like little lights. You can get a whole little system that has places for pots and a little light built into the top of it. So if you don't have a lot of light, you have a little setup where you have this little mini greenhouse grow light system with things growing. I have a friend who has one of those. She actually she has calendula and nasturtium in it now that are blooming in her house. So it's pretty cool looking. And those are edible as well. She's not growing them as microgreens, but she's growing them to flower, and they look pretty great. So I just want to show, some of these plants are perennial, some are biennial. This is looking at a life cycle of an annual plant, but what I'm showing you basically is this is the area we're looking at here. We're planting it from seed. And, I don't want to confuse you by showing you a tomato. We don't want you eating tomatoes, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But basically, imagine the seed being planted. You plant a bunch of the seeds, and you're growing them to this stage. So here's the cotyledons, this stem, and then a few true leaves at the top. And so this is what you're cutting and eating, is this piece right here. You don't want it getting mature. Often, many of these things get more kind of tough too as the leaves get older. Some of them do, or they get more wiry or hairy, and they're not as palatable. So fresh and young is what we're aiming for. And then there are different needs for seeds to germinate. So if you're trying to grow something like a cucumber as a sprout, which you can, you're going to need it to be a little warmer. You can jumpstart those by doing things like, if you have heat mats, you can use them. If you have the top of a refrigerator is always warm, sometimes they'll set things up there just to get bottom heat on them. As soon as they've germinated, then I put them where they get more light. But you can see some things have a lot more cold tolerance, like lettuce. Doesn't matter. I mean, you could be, our soil temperatures outside right now are probably higher than lettuce can tolerate. So lettuce would still germinate if you were to plant it outside. Optimum range is really what we're shooting for. Typically that's in, the 60-degree range. Eggplant is one of those anomalies. You're not going to be growing those as a microgreen. It's in the tomato family. So most of the things that you can grow are, if you're hitting the 60-degree range on keeping that soil warm, they're going to germinate well for you. And this is really developed for, outdoor growing, but it still makes a difference in your house to make sure that your seeds are warm enough. Let's see. All right, so here's some seed choices. It's a long list. There's lots and lots of things. Basically, lots of kinds of vegetables, especially leafy greens. So like arugula and kale, collards, mustard greens, turnip, anything like that. We grow root crops like carrot, beet, and radish also as a microgreen. The tops of carrots are edible. A lot of people don't eat them and don't know that. Radish too. I use the tops of my radishes to make pesto with. It makes a nice kind of spicy pesto. But you can eat them as just a green. Spinach, another one, and another leafy one. But then there are also things that are less obvious, like corn or cucumber or melon, that you can grow as a microgreen, and they have different kinds of flavors depending on what you grow. So the broccoli family plants have, a little more of that sort of sulfury, spicy flavor, pungence to them. And then things like corn and melon and cucumber are a little sweeter. Sunflower, nasturtium. Nasturtium has also a spiciness. You can grow chamomile. We typically grow chamomile out, to get the flower, but you can grow them as a sprout as well as a microgreen. Lots of herbs. They do really well. Some of them are slower growing than others, and we'll talk about that in a sec. And then there's lots of grains as well. And a lot of people grow wheatgrass and have been growing that for years to juice. So it has a lot of antioxidants, a lot of good energy in it. And then certain beans. Some beans are more problematic than others. And so we'll also talk about what not to grow here in a second. But also one thing to consider is the cost effectiveness. So some seeds are more expensive than others. I buy plants for a plant sale from our growers for both our March and our May plant sales for Tilth Alliance. And I have one grower, Rent Stew, who you guys might know or have seen their starts. They are kind of at all the PCCs, they're at different nurseries, and they're at our sales and have been we've been working with them for 20 some years plus. And Mike will grow specific things that I asked for that he's not growing to sell to the nurseries. But I send him the seeds, so I have to source a lot of these seeds myself and find them. And I find sometimes things like squash seed can be pretty expensive, but consider that you're also not growing a lot of them, and sometimes you can buy some of these in bulk at get a little bit of a reduced rate by buying bulk seeds as well. But the ones that are going to be most cost efficient are going to be things like mustard and lettuce. One packet of lettuce seed, you don't even have to buy it in bulk, has like 1,000 seeds in it. So, you never get through a whole pack of lettuce seed in a normal garden season. So you can, grow some outside and grow some as a microgreen and still, get a lot for your money for that. So just keep that in mind as you're shopping. Okay, and then this is what I don't want you to eat. So nightshade family is a tomato family, no pepper, sweet or hot, no eggplant, no tomatillo, ground cherry, tomatoes, no potato, though typically we're not growing those from seed anyway, we're growing them from tubers. Nicotiana is a flower, but also the tobacco plant. And that is also, all of these are in the same family. And then in lima beans and kidney beans, shoots should not be eaten. Rhubarb shoot should not be eaten. The only part of rhubarb, like the leaf, can be toxic. The stem is what we eat, but we cook it. And then fruit tree seed can have, things like cyanide and different lovely poisons in them. So just be aware. If you have questions, call the hotline. We can, look things up with you if we don't know off the top of our heads. This is just an example of what tomato seeds look like. This is something you would not be growing for microgreens. All right, so as you're planting, consider also how fast or slow these guys grow. They all have different germination rates as to when they're going to even emerge from the soil, and then how fast they're going to develop to a stage where you can harvest them. So I'm not going to give you dates and times, like it's going to take 2 weeks, but I will tell you that the faster things are going to be things like peas and sunflowers, mustard and radish, very fast to germinate. Radish and mustard are in and out of a garden if you're planting them outdoors in like 30 days. So you can imagine, as a microgreen, you can just turn these over and over and over and be growing tons of them very quickly and have them on hand a lot. Peas and sunflowers take a little longer to get to harvest because they're bigger, taller plants, and you are getting a bigger shoot out of them when you harvest, but they germinate very fast. They come up very quickly. And lettuce, the same. Lettuce just takes a little longer to get to size. Melons, cilantro, onion, they're kind of right behind these other guys. Onions can be a little slower, so sometimes you'll see them, like we'll see them be delayed more than some of the other things. But parsley, basil, broccoli, cabbage, definitely slower to develop. Broccoli and cabbage are related to mustard and radish. They're just, if you think about the genetics of those plants and what they're going to become, they're going to be big leafy things with thick stems and thick leaves. So they don't know that you're going to eat them quickly, right? They're trying to live their life and do their growth pattern. And so they are going to be slower to develop because they're trying to develop all those cells to create that big hefty plant that they become. Parsley is just notoriously slow. Anything, carrot, anything in that family is going to be slower to germinate and slower to grow. Dill could be slower as well. So anything related to that. Cilantro is related, but it's faster. We think of cilantro in terms of like salsa. So we think of it sort of paired with tomato and, peppers and, jalapenos, but it's actually a cool weather crop. It likes cooler soils and it grows really fast, and it goes from seed to flower very quickly. This is cilantro in the bottom right here. Often you'll see the little seeds sort of still hanging on to those cotyledons. So you see the cotyledon here. This is a good picture to show you the difference. And then you see the true leaves. So this is getting almost, not everybody in here has enough true leaves on it to harvest, but this is getting almost to harvest stage. And then on the left, we're looking at, looks like something like a cucumber, and the little true leaf is just coming up. These guys, you don't want to get too big. They get a little tougher when they get too big, but you do want them, oh, you want that true leaf out before you harvest. And then I think we got sunflower maybe on the right. And so these guys are very succulent and juicy, both cucumber and sunflower. The cilantro is thinner, and these are based on, like, if you think about what the mature plant looks like, they just have a different structure. And this will matter too when you go to decide what you like to eat. If you mix the seeds, mix things that have similar growth rates, because if one is very slow, it's going to get out competed by a fast. So if you put radish and carrot in together, for instance, it'll take you forever to see the carrot. By the time you harvest the radish, typically what you're doing is harvesting, and then you're pulling the dead roots out, the roots out, and you're restarting it. But you would then have to disturb all the carrot, or you'd have to leave those radish stems in place for the carrot to grow around. And you may get less germination because you've blocked the light from it, because they take so long to grow. So just know the different rates. You may have an intuitive sense of this already based on your own gardening experience. So just, we're growing little baby plants. We're trying to get them to germinate, and we want to, give them all the opportunity to do that. If you want to use lights, or just thinking about light in general, what comes from the sun, plants use two colors of light, primarily red light, and then blue light, and they both help the plant grow. Blue light is faster wavelength. It's scatters, and that's why our sky looks blue when it's not cloudy like it is today or raining. It scatters in the atmosphere, and so we see a blue sky. Red light, plants use a lot. It's probably like one of the main forms of light color of light that they use. They are, even if you're weeding and you scratch up the soil, the seeds that get exposed to the sun actually get triggered to germinate by red light. So red light helps seeds germinate. So if you have a light that you want to use to grow these guys in your home, then you need a full spectrum grow light, because you need them to actually germinate properly and help to grow. Red light can also help with the flower development on a plant, but that's only important for things that you have out in the garden. You need to keep them on long enough, and you need to keep the plants a distance from them. You don't want them right up in the light, but they need to be close enough to not make the plant stretch, but also far enough away to not burn the plant as well. But a good window, a sunny window, will help with this. But you'll see, I'll show you a picture of mine, the radishes I planted earlier this year, that I do have a grow lamp on my plants in that window, but this pot was sitting a little bit of a distance from it. So it's not as green as it could have been. All right, so when you get ready to do it, if you're going to reuse containers, make sure they're very clean them out well. You can add drainage holes, but as I said, you don't need to. We don't. I don't. Other people on my team do, but I just find that unless I have a bigger container, if I'm using a big salad, something that had a bunch of salad or arugula, those big tubs, plastic tubs you get in the refrigerated section in the produce area, you can put a few holes in that. But typically I try not to, because especially if I'm using clear things, I can see through the pot and see if it's dry. And what I'm trying to keep wet initially is just the top layer of soil, because I just want it wet where the seed's going to germinate. And of course, when you water, the whole thing will have moisture, but I don't want it to stay soaking wet because it could rot the seed. I just want it to stay moist so that seed's going to germinate. And once it starts to grow and grow roots, I can see the root growth. I can see where the roots are. I can tell if I've got water in the root zone by looking at it. So it's actually a pretty helpful thing to use reusable containers because you can actually see better what you're actually doing. I typically put the lids underneath them anyway. Part of that, and I'll show you this in a sec too, is as the seeds grow, they can push the soil up. And I've had, like, as the samples that we've grown for classes, we have a little light in the our education room at the Good Shepherd Center in Wallingford, and we grow them there, and we have the little cups and they have their little tags in them. And when we're getting ready to take them for a class, a lot of times I have to like take a little clump of dirt off that all the seedlings have pushed up, and they're wearing it like a little hat, like they're in the soil, but there's soil on top of them because they've pushed it up. So because you're growing in mass, they have a lot of strength and they actually displace soil. So you want to be sure that you can deal with that. Yep, raised hand.
Yes, so we had a question in the chat.
Okay.
Um, is it necessary to have holes in the growing containers?
Yeah, so no, that's what I'm saying. You don't have to do that. If you are using an old growing pot, great. If it has holes, just provide a saucer and make sure that you're capturing the water, because you're going to put these places often in a windowsill or somewhere where you don't want water just running everywhere. But I usually use something under them anyway, even without a hole. And I typically don't put holes in them. And sometimes I'll actually take them to the sink to water them because they're mobile and small, so that I don't have to worry about that. So no, you don't have to. They're not in here long enough. If you were growing a house plant, if you were growing a container garden, I would say, yes, of course, you need drainage holes because you need water to move out of the soil zone. But in this case, you just are keeping your eye on it. And especially with a clear container, you can see the soil is darker if it's moist and it's light brown if it's not. And you can see what you're doing. You need to make space for them wherever you're putting them. So, plan for that. Make sure you know where they're going. Are they going under a grow light? Are you going to buy a new little grow light system for them? I have a light that sits in my dining room over my house plants. A big round table full of plants, and it's on a long stand, but it sits up behind them, and it has 4 arms that come out with long, kind of rectangular shaped light bulbs. And it's flexible, so I can move the light wherever I want it, and I can have it focus on the whole table. And that is a full spectrum growing light. And you can find all kinds of versions of that. You can find single bulb ones. They're really easy. They're pretty cheap, and they work really well. And I use that because that part of my house is dim in the winter time. And so I have it growing on my plants during the winter to add light to the table. And then you want to make sure you get your labels set up. So you do want to label everything. This radish label is one I'm showing you with yesterday's date that I made. And it's just to give you an indication of what you want on it. You could put what variety it is too. If it's radish, sparkler, or, some kind of other thing, you could name it as well and know what you grew. Some microgreens, like mustard, some of them have reddish leaves and red stems, and some of them have green. So if you want to know the difference, name your variety too, so you remember what you grew. You could save these, reuse them, put a new date on it. But the date tells me when I planted it. And so if it's a radish and it's going to be fast to grow, I know that if in a week's time nothing's come up, that something's going on. So I want to know that as well. Yeah, Peggy. Peggy has their hand raised. Go ahead. I think Peggy has a question. Is it in the chat?
Yes, it looks
Okay.
like her audio is um, intermediately working. Oh, do you keep the grow lights on all the time? Oh,
Now the grow lights, 12 hours max. Um, for my plants, I turn it on. It comes on kind of partway during the day and is on for about 6 hours for my plants, and that's enough for my house plants. And that would be enough for microgreens too, I think. Really, when you think about veggies growing outside, they need to have 6 to 8 hours of sun on them. So this is what we're trying to replicate. So they don't need a lot of, long day. But they do need good light in order to get the maximum growth and chlorophyll. And then sometimes also when you're preparing labels, you can reuse labels. So this is actually a picture of my label box. These are all things I've grown over the years. And I just could, something like a microgreen, this is easy to reuse. I just use a Sharpie and would write right over it so I can see it. And I don't care that there's printing on it. I don't care, what it looks like. But I typically wash these and throw them in this box and use them later. You can see one here, a list some from Sunseed Farm. Sunseed is one of our growers for the plant sales. So I have many of their tags in my boxes from plants I bought from our plant sales. All right, when you go to plant them, fill your container 1/3 to half full. This is where I'm talking about the seeds are going to be very powerful and push that soil up. You don't need a lot of soil. You don't want them pushing the soil up over the top of the pot. So do not fill these containers all the way to the top because you will have spillage of soil everywhere. Then you're going to sprinkle the seed evenly over the top of the soil. You can be generous with this. You're trying to get a full cup or tray of plants. You're not trying to just grow a couple and give them their maximum space so that they can develop into a full big plant, because we're not trying to grow them like that. You're going to cover that with soil. So after you've filled the container with soil, up to a third, half at the most, sprinkle the seed evenly over the top. And, it doesn't need to be a ton of space between them. Then you cover the seed with soil. And rule of thumb is what you're covering with should only be 2 to 3 times the depth of the seed's width. So it's going to be different for corn than it's going to be for lettuce. Lettuce is very flat. So just keep that in mind. You're not putting a lot over it if it's a tiny seed, as opposed to they need to be, further under the soil. And this is showing in centimeters the difference. And mostly I just want the visual here that, some seeds are bigger than others. So just keep that in mind. You can also follow the seed packet recommendation. So radishes, for instance, on the back, it tells you how deep to plant things. It tells you how far apart to put them. You don't need to worry about that because this is not average, it's not you're not trying to develop a radish root, which you need to give them space between each seedling. You're trying to develop microgreens, and so you want them close together. The more you have, the better. And then again, don't fill it too full. Seeds will push it out, and then you're going to water it when you're done. And then this is what that process sort of looks like. So here's one of those trays I mentioned that had, what did this have in it? I think it had salad in it, or lettuces, and it has soil. And you can see I did not fill it all the way to the top. And I sprinkled radish seed over the top. And, it's not going to be like some of them will be right next to each other. There will be some spaces. There are some seeds under some of these blank areas you see that sort of nestled in and settled in. And this was an early scarlet globe radish. This is the same packet, that I can use to get info from. This is my setup, what it looked like after I put the soil over the top. So there's some soil over the top. What you're seeing here aren't seeds as much as pieces of perlite. Some of the seeds sometimes will migrate up a little bit. That's okay. You can kind of push them down in. And then you use a water bottle that you can make a watering implement out of. I drink hint water, and so I use these a lot, and I recycle them to use for our classes. And what we do is poke holes in the top. You can do this with like a little one of those little pins that you put into a bulletin board. It's pretty soft plastic, and I do it from the other side, from the top side. And then you just push into it and make a whole bunch of little sprinklers holes. And then when you go to water, just tipping the bottle will water, but you can squeeze it a little bit to get a stream of water out. And so this is how you water it. And you can see how the soil looks kind of light brown in this picture with where they're just sitting next to each other. And then as it's watered and after the lid goes on it, you can see how dark it is. And that's the difference between watered soil and unwatered soil in appearance. So you can tell. Now I've put this lid on it. It's already starting to build humidity inside the dome here. And then after the seeds start to sprout, I take the lid off and I put it underneath. And here's the image of that same container about, 4 days later, maybe 3 days even, with all the seeds starting to sprout. And you can see what I'm talking about with the soil being pushed up. Even with the soil as low as I put it in here, you can see how high it gets. So that's why you don't want to fill it up to the top. If that were filled to the top, the soil would be way up here and starting to spill out of the pot. So you just have to keep that in mind. These guys are powerful. There's a lot of energy as they're germinating, pushing soil around. They move through the soil, their roots move through the soil, and they're displacing the soil as they grow and develop cell structure. So this is basically the setup. You can also see there's a little bit, they're kind of paler in here. They're kind of not as dark green as I would like. And this is my plant table. The light is kind of more over those plants. So had I put that up right on the table, it would have had a little bit more light, but it's in this is a north window. What you're seeing behind it too is basil that I had harvested and had rooted in the water. And then I replanted and used. Yeah, Peggy.
What is the ideal room temperature to germinate and grow? Ooh, that's a good question.
It depends on the plant. So as you saw in that chart, you'll have access to this later, so you can go back and look at that. And I think I got that. I think that one was from Cornell University. It's just a chart of temperatures for seed germination. Lettuce, 35-degree soil is fine. So if your house is cool, it's going to do fine. The warmer temperature plants like cucumbers and corn, might grow a little slower if your house stays cool, but it's all going to be fine. I mean, most of us have at least a 60-degree home. And, my wife and I differ on this. So she turns it up, I turn it down. 60 degrees is where I leave my thermostat. And it's fine. The stuff grows fine in my house. So we're not trying to get them to grow to root or shoot, be flowers or, develop a big plant. We're just trying to get these little seeds to grow, and they're pretty tolerant as they're young. But to get them to germinate, you might want some bottom heat for things like the cucumber or melon, corn, stuff like that. Here's a little example of the watering. And again, as you're watering with these things, I love them. You can squeeze them a little, or you can just let the water passively come out of the bottle that we created. And then you can see how dark the soil is. So she's about to lift her hand in this picture. And, I took about 3 pictures of her doing this to get the right angle. And you can see how dark it is. You can look at the sides of it and make sure that the water's getting all the way down, especially after the plant's growing. You want to make sure the water goes all the way into the soil, into the root zone. Right now, I really need the top of the soil to stay moist. You might be watering a little more often. So when the seeds are germinating, they're very vulnerable to drying off. So you can water every day, or just check it. If it's moist, don't water it. If you have the lids on them, they're going to stay moist. You're creating a little mini greenhouse in humidity, and so they will do better. You do want to remove that at some point because if it's too wet, you can get fungal growth in there, and you don't want that either. Um, and then you can reduce the watering to whatever you need. And that's why I like to use this method of just reusing things, because I can really see what I'm doing. If you're using a system that you can't, then you just have to get a feel for it. How wet is the soil? You can feel the soil too to see, you can sort of reach down in there and check it. Don't overwater them though, because they will mildew, they will dampen off, you'll get fungal growth, and you could kill your plants by doing that as well. You can kill the root systems with too much water, especially if you're not putting a hole in the bottom. All right, so let's look at the nutrient load. So this is a study that was done in a paper that was in the Journal of Agriculture, Agricultural and Food Chemistry, and this is like 2012. So this is an old study, but there's been lots of, research on these guys over the years, looking at nutrient content of foods, and in microgreens in particular, they're finding that these species that they checked had the highest concentrations of some of the nutrients that become important vitamins for our body. And we're going to look at what those are in a sec. So they found that the cotyledons, those seed leaves, have the highest concentration. So that's why you don't want them to grow too far, because you want that seed leaf to be intact and fresh still. But you want that first leaf because you also want a little more meat, you want more substance. However, if it's something that takes a long time to grow and you want to, like broccoli, you could let it just grow to the stage where it's about to put a true leaf out and just harvest all the cotyledons. And now you still got microgreens. You just are going to have a little bit less leaf matter, but you're going to get that higher nutrient load. So they're very, very powerful nutrient wise, because they have everything in them that are actually helping them grow their own cells as well. So the things that are mentioned here, ascorbic acid, of course, is vitamin C. This is a water soluble vitamin. We don't make it. We can't hold it. It goes out of our body very quickly, so we have to eat it. And this is a great way to get it into your system. It works as an antioxidant, inhibiting cell damage. It supports our immune system. As we know, everybody's like, you got a cold, take vitamin C. Drink something, tea with vitamin C. I have like hibiscus flower tea, really high in vitamin C. It helps with iron absorption, which is super important, and storage of iron in your body. The carotenoids are the things that we see in trees and shrubs when they turn colors in the fall. So that's what all those pigment colors are. Chlorophyll is green, and it masks these in a plant, unless it's like a variegated plant. Sometimes you'll see that, or a plant like you're looking at in this picture. So those are probably some beta carotenes that we're looking at here with the purpley reds. These are very, very high in antioxidants. They are often very flavorful as well. Plants with these kind of pigments. They are fat soluble, so they are absorbed into your body better if you're eating them with something that has, like olive oil or, some kind of good fat with it. And they also provide immune support. And then the xanthophylls, the yellows in this group, actually are really important for your eyes, for eye health. And so, it's kind of a miracle. These plants have everything we need to be healthy, and they're doing us a service by growing, and we are like benefiting from being able to grow this little forest of nutritious little powerhouses that we can eat. Very simple, easy way to get good nutrients, and not have to spend a whole lot of money doing it as well. And then phylloquinone is vitamin K, a precursor, and it helps with your blood coagulation and bone and vascular metabolism. Some people can't have this vitamin, they may have issues with that. If you're taking blood thinner, some people need to be careful. So just be aware of that, and you can You can research, which things have less of this than others. The tocopherols, vitamin E precursors, they are radical scavengers. So they are like sort of like hunting for all these free radicals that cause oxidation damage to our cells. They are also fat soluble. And so we typically, you'll see when you take vitamin E capsules, they're like little oily things, right? They incorporate into our cell membranes, keep them healthy, and protect from that oxidation damage. So they have what they just listed in those plants, which we're going to look at here. The green daikon radish, the garnet amaranth, and the cilantro and red cabbage were the ones that had the highest nutrient density of the things they looked at. I don't know what their complete list was. I didn't pull this information, but we could find out. We can look up this article and see what other things they tested. But so green daikon radish are those radishes that get the big long white roots. They have bigger leaves. But apparently that kind of radish has more nutrient density. Red cabbage, garnet amaranth. Again, these are colorful, so they're going to have more of the carotenes in them. And then cilantro. What could be easier? You know how fast cilantro grows? Fast. It's relatively inexpensive. I don't like the taste of it, so this is not one I'm going to grow. I will eat it if somebody puts it in food. Like I had Mexican food the other day, and it was okay. But I'm one of those people that gets a little bit of a soapy taste from it. I do, however, like the seed of cilantro, the coriander. I love that. It has a different flavor to me. But what you're looking at in this chart is, so the vitamin C load of all of these. So number one, the daikon. Number two is the amaranth. Number three is the cilantro. And number four is the red cabbage. So the red cabbage has the most vitamin C in it. And then next is the amaranth. Amaranth is a plant we grow for flour, but it also is a super edible microgreen, but it's also an edible green. So you could grow it in a garden and just harvest the leaves off of it and use it in salads that way as well. Lutein or zeaxanthin is, these are part of the carotenoid group. And the one that's highest there is the cilantro, which is not surprising to me. And then the vitamin K is the garnet amaranth. So if you have issues with, blood, you have to take blood thinners. Maybe you don't want to grow something that's higher in that. So the better choice would be something like the green daikon radish, which would get you other good nutrients. And then the vitamin E precursor is the daikon radish. Again, good. But it's interesting. They're all a little different. And they all have, benefits for you that are going to help with nutrition. Simple way to get it. So when you go to harvest, basically you're just cutting the stems. You cut them above the soil. You don't want to get a bunch of soil in there. You don't want to get it messy. You want to do it clean. So you're going to do it when there's about 2 sets of leaves. You can do it a little sooner if you want, like you see in this picture on the left. And you want that stem too. Don't sacrifice the stem. You can get as close to the soil as you're comfortable getting. And then you have those tops, you're going to wash them and dry them. And typically you should just use them right away. Like you should be harvesting as you're using, because you're going to get the best nutrient load that way, and they'll be freshest and tastiest. If you need to store them, you can put them into a plastic bag in the fridge with a paper towel wrapped around them, like you can do with lettuce and other greens to help keep them fresh. I've also done things like pea shoots, something like that. You could put in a little jar of water for, a hot minute, but you don't want to leave them in there too long, because again, bacteria will start to grow in that water. You know how water can get slimy when you've got like plant root starts in it, trying to root things. And then they can last about 5 to 7 days in the fridge. But again, they're most nutritious when you eat them fresh. So plan around that, find a way to use them up, grow in smaller containers, so you can harvest one at a time and you just are done with it, and you can let the other ones grow. Stagger your seeding. times. So say you just really want to grow radish and that's it. You could have 5 cups going, but you just start them at different times so that they're not all ready at once. It's like if I grow lettuce in my garden, I try to minimize how many plants I put out there at one time, because what am I going to do with 6 heads of lettuce at once? It doesn't, I want to eat it fresh. And sometimes they're coming along at a little bit different rates, but staggering succession planting will help you with that. It's really easy to do. This is a question we get a lot. Do these things regrow? Mostly the answer is no. These are dicots, which means they have 2 cotyledons. So they have the 2 pairs of leaves, the pair of leaves, the first set of leaves, seed leaves, and you cut them below that because you want to eat that, and that's it. You've killed the plant. You've like done it in. However, things like pea family, if you cut above the seed leaf and sacrifice, don't take that cotyledon, it will grow a new shoot. Things like onions will also regrow because they're in the grass family. They're different. They're a monocot. They have 1 cotyledon. And so often onions are cute too. You always see these little seeds on top, those little black seeds, kind of, they wear them like little hats. And that's very typical of what onions look like. You have to, clean those up when you harvest them, because you got to take those seeds off. You can eat them. It's not going to hurt you, but it's, a little bit crunchy. But grass family plants. So if you're growing things like wheatgrass, any kind of the cereal grasses, it's like mowing a lawn. They regrow. So you can cut them and let them regrow for a while. You can usually get 2 to 3 harvests out of them. And then you should start over again. The onion family will regrow. The yield will be reduced in that second growth. But like I have right now, I grow a lot of green onions in my backyard, and I have kind of them all over the place in different pots. And I had one that I used the tops out of, but I saved the bottom with the root, had a nice, really big root system, and I put in a little cup of water, and it's starting to regrow its shoot. So I'm going to pot that up and just like stick it in my kitchen windowsill and see what it does. But I could put it back outside and it would continue to grow. But I feel sorry for it because it's cold out there. I don't want to put it back out. Better to start over with fresh seed, fresh soil. You can reuse your soil, just freshen it up a little bit. A lot of times it gets kind of consumed. You can see in this picture of the grass here, this is wheatgrass. There's not much in there. Like they've basically gotten almost nothing down there, and the roots are kind of occupying the whole space. So, there's not going to be much there at the point where you go to redo this. But this is one, again, you can cut and let regrow for a couple of times. But for any other things, you really should just start over. And that's why, considering what you want to grow, a packet of seeds, the more seeds in the packet, the more mileage you're going to get out of it. Because you do have to start over again. And then, of course, comes the fun. Why do we do this? Well, I do it partly because I just like to watch things grow. So I'm just like fascinated by plants, and I just like to see them growing. I love them at that stage. They're so vibrant and alive, and it's just like, wow. Just gives you a lot of hope and love looking at them. But if you're looking at, what are you going to do with these things? It depends on what you like. So the texture of the leaves of these guys are going to vary. So sunflowers are going to be hairier the bigger they get. They have, if you look, if you grow sunflowers, they're kind of fuzzy, the leaf. So you don't want to let them get too big, but they're going to have a little bit different texture than something like a radish will, for instance. Something like melon and cucumber, they have a very sweet flavor, even almost melony and cucumbery, and they're juicy, and so they're going to have a lot of moisture in them. Something like a radish is going to be very spicy, when you eat a radish, it's kind of concentrated flavors, if you think of it that way. And so if you like radishes, you may love radish microgreens. If you're not fond of them, that might not be your choice. Corn's going to be sweeter, also a little more juicy and succulent. Broccoli has that pungency, like in that whole family, it has a lot of sulfur, in the plants that we harvest from the brassica group. You can put them fresh in a salad. This was a recipe I was trying and trying last night to copy and paste. I was telling Elizabeth I was having trouble. My computer was being glitchy. And I was trying to copy and paste the web address of this recipe. And I think it was called Yummy Something. It was a woman's blog. Because I wanted to show you this recipe in particular, but it's like peach salad, which has like, I think, crumbled cheese of some sort. She may have used feta, avocado, and microgreens, and it just looked like totally delicious. Like that's a lot of nutrient with a lot of flavor. There's pecans in there as well. So really beautiful, and the way to use these guys is to put them on top, first of all, so you can see them because they're cool, but also because you don't want them wilting up too much. You want them fresh on the top. And that's why I say, wait to cut them. You're ready to make the salad, make your salad just before you serve it, cut the microgreens up and throw them on top. Questions?
Yes. Before you mentioned using organic potting soil, now reading to add compost for second harvest. Should I start with a prescribed ratio for soil and compost? Good question.
That's a great question. So when I say refresh the soil, you don't have a lot of soil in these things. I'm talking about a handful of compost. And compost is just going to give more micronutrients back into the soil to sort of kickstart it. There are microorganisms in soil, even in potting soil, and that's important for relationship for healthy plants to have that. And you can buy organic compost as well. Ratio typically for compost to soil, but remember, potting soil is also manufactured and is made of compost already, already has it as a base ingredient, but it's usually about, you don't want more than 5% organic matter in any soil mix. So it doesn't really matter. Don't worry about it too much, because all you're trying to do here is give it a little lift. If it's easier just to have an extra bag of potting soil sitting around that you just use that, just use some fresh potting soil in it. And then you are actually adding compost too, because it's in the potting soil. But if you have compost on hand, don't be afraid to use that as well. If it's a little higher than 5%, it's not going to be the end of the world either, because these guys will still grow. They grow fast. But the more organic matter you have, the more nutrients get tied to the soil and less available to the plants. And that's why we talk about that, and why we tell people when you do a soil test for an outdoor garden, you don't want more than 5% organic matter. Because one time we tested the Good Shepherd Center Learning Garden, and it was like 22% organic matter, because they've been putting compost in all the time and wood chips all the time in the past. And it was just like, whoa, we had to stop doing that. We had to actually remineralize the soil by adding other things to it, mineral content back to the soil. Because soil is really a combination of minerals, organic matter, air, water, and microorganisms. And that mineral content is where a lot of the nutrients come from. It also comes out of organic matter, but it doesn't get out of the organic matter without the microorganisms working on it and breaking it down. So there's a big relationship that's happening between, what we call the soil food web. There's this whole thing going on in the soil that's making things available to your plants. There's communication between plants. There's sharing of nutrients between plants and fungi. They can't photosynthesize, plants can. They share sugars. The fungi give them plants nutrients. Trees in a forest, the nursery trees, the baby trees, are not on their own. They're actually being fed by their big, parents around them, by root system interactions. So there's miracles going on around us all the time, and it's nourishing us and keeping us alive. So here's a beautiful recipe. You're going to find a million online. I think, like I said, I think her blog was Yummy Something. I can try and find it and share it with Elizabeth if you want to know about it.
I actually found it. It was
good.
Yummy Addiction.
That's it. And so you can put it in salads like this. You can make a salad just of microgreens. You could put it on sandwiches like you would sprouts, any kind of sprout like we do with alfalfa sprouts. You could add it to a grain bowl if if you like to eat quinoa or other things. You could put it on top of a bowl of soup as a last minute sort of garnish for a little kick. You can lightly saute them. You don't want to overcook them because you don't want to lose the nutrient load. So you just a little bit of stir fry, a little sauteing. You can top deviled eggs. I love deviled eggs and I love egg salad. So adding them to that adds a ton of flavor. You can put them in smoothies or you can blend them with other veggies and fruits. I saw one recipe for, and I think I have a picture of it. So the next pictures are just pictures of stuff. So here's an example of like a deviled egg with some probably little radish or might be some amaranth too there, garnish on it. You could throw it in the top of a soup. This was a mushroom soup of some sort. This is a smoothie with banana and microgreens. You can see, all the leaf matter in there. You're ingesting that. This is the juice I mentioned. So this was like, maybe it wasn't this one. There was another one that had like mango and pineapple and microgreens, which sounded delicious. There's an example. Pea shoots are a great choice to use to stir fry. We do that anyway. You can buy them in the store, right? You can go down to Wajimai and buy pea shoots, but you can grow your own. And then, you can grow them in the outside in the garden too. They're pretty cold tolerant. A lot of times people plant peas in October and November and let them winter over. You can plant them early in the spring. But you can also just plant little pots of them inside and keep cutting the shoots. And they handle that stir fry saute pretty well. And then this is an example of like a quinoa bowl with what else is there's a pomegranate. They might have put avocado in there too, but that also sounded pretty good. And again, avocado is super nutrient dense. Pomegranate super nutrient dense. These are really healthy. Quinoa, lots of protein, really healthy foods that taste great. And that's what I got for you. So these are our sponsors who, give us the funding to be able to be in the community in King County. Seattle Public Utilities administers our contract. We work directly with them. Hazardous Waste Management Program gives us more than half of our funding for the hotline, so we can be out in King County. The Rainwise program is a Seattle King County combined program, but in the city of Seattle for stormwater management. And then the Cascade Water Alliance is in different parts of King County, also trying to, make sure people are conserving water and protecting water. Our mission basically is to talk to people about natural gardening methods and making sure, that you're protecting our resources. We also answer hazardous waste management phone calls. So when you call the hazardous waste line to ask a question about what do I do with this, pesticide that I have in my garage that I've had for 10 years and I don't use, we're answering that phone. So we answer both the garden hotline and the hazardous waste line phone lines. And we have a chat on the Rainwise website if you want to ask about the Rainwise program. As I said, that's for Seattle, but we will talk to you regardless if you just want to ask us questions about stormwater topics. But yeah, we go around, as I said, Elizabeth and I will be doing classes every other month. I forget what's coming up. What's the next one?
Yes, the next one is, if I remember correctly, got my notes here. I think it was starting seeds 101 for the summer or the spring and summer seasons.
Yeah, so we'll talk a little bit about some of the same things about how seeds work. We'll go into a little more depth about like what's inside a seed and show you kind of a little botanical lesson on what seeds do, and then talk about all the different ways you can start them. And we don't all have a greenhouse. I wish I did. I get to work in one at work, but it's been unheated. We haven't gotten it all finished yet, and so it's been unheated for a few years. So we have, struggle with a few things, but we're supposed to have electricity this year. So then we'll have some lights, and then we'll have some heat mats, and we'll have a good setup. But there are ways to do it at home. without having to have all that equipment as well.
Oh, we have
This
a
is good
question.
practice, actually, right? Because you're going to be starting all these little seeds and get a feel for what they do.
That's so true. And there's nothing wrong with practice, especially delicious practice.
Right?
So we do have a question in the chat. Oh, this has been so informative, so informative. Thank you. Where can I learn about the schedule of the Zoom classes? So, great question, Peggy. I'm going to be creating the Zoom links for the rest of the scheduled year, and it will be on our Marlene's website, events and educations tab. So, stay tuned for more. Also, all of the wonderful gardening classes that Laura here has taught with us. We have a gardening playlist on our YouTube channel. So definitely follow and subscribe, and then so you can stay in touch whenever we upload a new video. This one will be uploaded later. So if there's any loved ones or friends and family that weren't able to be here today but want that information, you can view it now on our Federal Way Facebook page and then later on our YouTube. And we have a lot of great topics from Laura this year. And it's going to be every other month. It's the first Saturday of every other month at 10 a.m. So mark your calendars. All right. Do we have any questions? Oh, one of our several of our attendees said thank you. Let me check Facebook Live here. I got the sunlight right in my face right now.
Well,
Feels
you're
great.
lucky you have some sunlight.
Yeah, just came out of the clouds out of nowhere, like ah. Let's see here. Facebook Live. There we are. Doesn't look like we have any comments right now. But I believe I put the link to the website for Garden Hotline, but I will do it again. And like Laura had mentioned, this is a wonderful, free resource to ask any questions that might come up later. And we're just so grateful that this is open and available for free to the community. And we're always so grateful for Laura's expertise and just amazing gardening skills. I always love, Laura, how you actually include pictures in your PowerPoint of your projects. Like, hey, I actually did this. This isn't just a stock photo.
I was trying to find one I had of the ones I had growing on my table in the backyard, my little patio table. I didn't do any this year, but I think it was last year, and I was scrolling through all my pictures, but I have like literally 10,000 pictures on my phone. And most of those by accident, because I was trying to keep it, keep them getting downloaded to the computer, but I accidentally uploaded them all into my phone from my computer. And so now they're all,
Oh no.
I got to deal with that. So there were too many to find it. I couldn't find it. But it was very cute, and they grow very well outside. So, you don't have to like only have them in the house during the warm parts of the, growing season. You can have them on your front porch. You can have them all over the place, and maximize that as well. If you live in an apartment and you have a deck, you can put them out there.
I never thought about that. And I thought that was a really great idea. It's like you can you can have like a little entryway, you know, walking up to your house, and it's like, oh, there's some cute little microgreens. Well, We have a couple more people here on this Zoom meeting. Feel free to ask questions if you have any, folks, but like we mentioned, there's a amazing resource that you can tap into anytime, and definitely check out um, the information that's on their website. There's a lot of great PDFs that you can download straight to your computer, and just amazing resource. And have to thank Laura again for all that you do in the community. And it's been a true pleasure working with you, facilitating these gardening classes. So thank
Thank
you.
you. Nice to see you again.
Yes, nice to see you again too. And I'm really looking forward to March. That is March March 2nd. So yay.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you everyone who watched Facebook Live and will watch this later on YouTube, and everyone that attended the Zoom meeting. Have a wonderful weekend and take good care.